Hello, hello, hello. Ooh, okay, we're live. Let's start watching Blade. Let's see what happens. I don't know why it's so dark. I'm gonna random start, but I don't really mind. Let's turn that off. Is it because of where I'm sat? I think it is because of where I'm sat. So I've got a viewer. Hello, viewer. Still waiting for the film to start. I'm just trying to get this set up so you can see okay, and I'm not too obscure. I'm not meant to be this dark. Just if I sit forward a bit. First time I've done anything like this. So do you want to, oh, there we go. That's better. All right. Okay. So let's get going with Blade. So I'm going to watch the movie. I'm going to try and talk about it at the same time. Love this film. Saw it at the cinema when it first came out. Occasionally we'll turn around and get myself a water. Promise, no vodka. It's just such a great film. Yeah, it's one of the first films that I saw from a comic book perspective that actually took the genre really seriously. It actually made it really interesting. Vampires were kind of in vogue, if you like. And I thought that with Blade, you had somebody in Wesley Snipes who was just absolutely badass cool. You know, he was somebody who made you believe in Blade. I think that's really important. So when you go back and look at the first scenes, it opens up 1967, you've got something that's really quite different and interesting in terms of, well, what's happened to this person. As we all find out, it's Blade's mother. But if we go back and look at the comics, when he first appeared in 1973, I think, in the sort of July issue of Tomb of Dracula, Blade himself was a Cockney. Oi, Savaloy. Yeah, so he was from Britain originally, which is quite interesting that they've taken him to America. I think that's a good thing. It just really changes things up a little bit, makes it a bit different, makes sense that taking into account that it's 1998, age of Wesley Snipes, all that type of stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. If anybody has any questions or anything as we're going along, just ask away. I think Stephen Dorff is fantastic in this film as well. I really think that he gets across as being the menace without, you know, he's nicely over the top without being too bonkers. I think that's a good thing. You want something where you want somebody who you look at and go, actually, they could be pretty scary. They could be a little bit out there. So, you know, we'll see. So yeah, I think one of the best things about Blade as well is the initial party, the vampire party, the club sequence where you have the big bloodbath, this whole shower. So definitely taking influence from foam parties that were around in the 1990s. Only this time it's vampires, and it just makes complete sense, doesn't it? If you think about it, you've got what you're going to do. Where's the best party place for vampires to be? Okay, so let's go to a place where you can have tons of blood around without anybody thinking anything weird about it. Well, yeah, we go to a meatpacking area where there's going to be tons of blood, and then we have this music which fits well with their tone, their speed. Everything about it is turned up to 11, and it's also a great way to introduce the fact that vampires are around. They do the things that everybody else does, but at the same time they also are a little bit dangerous. And as Blade himself says later on, there's worse things out at night than vampires, mainly himself. Yeah, when you watch the initial dance sequence, it actually feels like a bit of a club in the 1990s. Not that I did a huge amount of clubbing, but I did go. So if you go back and look at it looks and feels right. The strobe lighting effect, it just enhances it from a visual aesthetic. So you've got something that says, hey, we're in a club, the music's right, the tempo's fast. You're wondering what's going on. You were sort of with the guy, he's with you. He's a perfect conduit to say, yeah, here I am, we're going to have a bit of a party time. And then the next thing you know, you see, oh, hang on a minute, we're going to have a bit of a ruckus. Something's not quite right. He feels this drop. You get the first brief glimpse of Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost. And all this just adds, I think, to the whole piece. It just makes it feel different. David Goyer, who wrote it, also, I think he wrote a Van Damme film, the one where Van Damme is in prison and he gets to. I can't remember the name of the film off the top of my head anymore, which is a sign of old age. But he's got experience. I mean, he obviously went on to write Batman Begins and had influence other things. Unfortunately, he was the director of Blade Trinity, but least said, soon suspended. So yeah, right in the middle now of the blood shower sequence, the whole thing in the club where the foam party isn't water and soap, it's blood, or probably corn syrup, but it just adds to it all. The vampires are really starting to come out. They're showing the fangs. They're getting much more into it. Everything. The guy that Tracy Lords at the start of the film brings into the club is absolutely terrified, as you probably would be. This is somebody who's going, whoa, hang on a second. 1 minute I'm in the middle of something and just minding my own business. Next thing you know, I'm being threatened and I think I'm going to die. But there's this great big bit, he's crawling, then all of a sudden the music just stops. And he looks up, the blood stops pouring from the ceiling. And you just see these black boots, this long leather coat, and you just know that something's about to go off. As Blade finally gets his reveal, Wesley Snipes looking very, very, very cool. All vampires are there. They know who Blade is, of course. The Daywalker, they're absolutely bricking it. They're thinking, come on, we can take you on. But as the audience, we know that, no, this is, if they're afraid, there's something about this guy. He's not somebody who's afraid of the vampires. In fact, he looks like he's relishing the chance to take them on. Interestingly, in the original script, he was supposed to use crossbows. They've obviously switched that up to shotgun, probably for ease, aesthetics, less risk to the stunt performers, probably, maybe. But also the fact that he could then subload it with the undercarriage of the pump action shotgun is a stake. Interestingly, bring silver in as a major thing. They remove some of the classic vampire traits of, you don't have to be afraid of crossing water. Crosses don't work, which kind of makes sense, really, because if you're a vampire of a different faith, why would a cross offend you? There's nothing, it doesn't make any sense. Also, then you've got the ability to use firearms. So vampires in the movie appear to be, sorry if the light keeps changing behind me. I'm doing my best. I've got no super tech or anything to do this. Sorry if I get distracted every now and again, because I am watching a movie at the same time just to help my memory with this. The sword, everything about Blade's weapons fits well with the sort of martial arts aesthetic. I've always kind of felt, because it came out beforehand, that, and I'm sure I'm probably not the only person who's ever said this or will say this, but there's a definite link between Blade and the Matrix. Not only the way Blade looks, the way he dresses, but also if you think about it in terms of how the story progresses, in terms of how Blade says vampires are a virus, Agent Smith, vampires are a virus, or humanity is a virus, sorry. You don't have vampires, and well, you kind of do, don't you? In the Matrix, I suppose, for those bloody twins. It just gives it something slightly different. I'm trying to just move this around. Sorry if it keeps getting a bit rubbish. This is my first attempt at live streaming, and obviously it's not the best in the world. I will get better, I promise. So now he's obviously trying to do something a bit different, trying to use fire, which obviously through vampire lore, a lot of people know that fire is something that supposedly is very dangerous to vampires. So it's just worth just flagging that up. So you got the cops arriving. You got the guy who was originally at the party, wondering what the hell has been going on. There he was, thinking he was out for a good time. Possibly might have got a bit of action at the end of the night if he was lucky. Blade climbing out from underneath a sewer grate. The wind's blowing, so his the back of his coat is flapping in the wind, gives him a bit of extra drama. And they're bringing in the barbecued vampire. He's still smoking. I like it. Good use of dry ice. To sort of add to the effect that he's still on fire. He does look like a bit of a mess. Apparently, the actor for that particular role wasn't expected to have a big part. I was going to get killed off at the start, but I think because of his performance and the way that he engaged and took on the character, gave him a bit of extra dimension, meant that the script was adjusted slightly to give him a bit more time in role, and that's really cool. Also, it makes sense from a scientific perspective that when you go to the hospital and you meet Karen for the first time, you get to find out that she's a hematologist. To make sense, you know, somebody who's a specialist in blood. Why wouldn't that, you know, if you're going to bring in a science perspective on things, why wouldn't you do that? So I think she's a good character. I think she gets the opportunity to stand out a little bit. She doesn't take much nonsense. She's not a permanent damsel in distress. She comes up with some stuff that is really useful, not just for Blade, but also for herself. Also brings up again the obvious connection with the Matrix, I feel, with Blade when he talks to her and says, you know, you've got to wake up. You know, our candy-coated reality underneath it is the real world, in the same way that Morpheus says, you know, welcome to the real world to Neo. So I think that's quite a good link between the two. So going through the autopsy scene at the moment, again, what I like about it is there's good prosthetics. I kind of sometimes miss prosthetics with the overuse of CGI these days. There's, even though CGI has come a long way since this, and the original finale was the CGI Blood God, which I'm glad they didn't do, because it kind of ruins the aesthetic that Deacon Frost brought to the role in terms of the way that Stephen Dorff played him. He actually felt much more of an actual three-dimensional character. All right, admittedly an over-the-top one, but still someone who you could actually think, yeah, this is a pretty good guy, quite interesting the way this sort of stuff's done. And then you've got Blade coming back to finish the vampire off. Punched him straight in the nose. He just cut his arm off. Running theme throughout the film. How many times this guy has been losing an arm? I think it's quite interesting as well that Blade wears body armor, or at least plates, to show that he is vulnerable. And I think that's something that makes Blade stand out. And it helps, you know, he's not like this. He is superhuman, but he's somebody who has a vulnerability to him. Not only does he rely on Whistler, who we're about to meet, but he also is someone who has had a pretty tough start, as we go and find out throughout the film. He's obviously having flashbacks, sees Karen on the floor, thinks about his mother, just trying to move to somewhere that's a bit more comfortable. Might ruin the lighting. There we go, that's a bit better. This camera's terrible. I do like this sequence where Blade is rescuing Karen from the hospital. Is he trying to rescue her? I can't tell. I can't understand what's wrong with this camera. Anyway, so yeah, he throws her across the roof. He makes the jump, but it doesn't seem like a jump that's 100% unrealistic. It just feels like a jump that someone with his capabilities could make. He's just popped his shoulder back in. So we're in obviously a nondescript city. They might name it in the film, but I can't quite remember what it's called. But I think obviously you could tell it was shot in Los Angeles, the low rise. It's not New York. Yeah, Rottie was that she's obviously, Karen now is suffering from the effects of her bite that transformed her, or has the ability to transform her into a vampire. And I think it just slows the pace down to the right level. Music sort of shifts and changes. There's good use of obviously lots of early shooting in downtown LA. So sunrise, quiet streets, everything along those lines fits with that particular tone. Blade obviously now has his superpowered car, which I think is a Dodge Charger that's been upgraded, pimped, whatever the right terminology is. I definitely need to do this in a room with better lighting. Maybe it fits the aesthetic. I can't quite see. I've got no fans. So yeah, gone to Whistler's workshop. So Whistler, I'm sure this isn't used for a lot of people, but it was. He was a character that was created for the Spider-Man animated series in the 1990s, when we had the Morbius living vampire character appear in that really great show. And Chris Christopherson does a really great job. I think there's a couple of other actors that in line for the role, but I think once he became available, he was sort of like the only choice to do it. In here as well, though, in this particular sequence, what they took out of the film, which I thought, having read it in the original script, I thought was really quite interesting. They've got this vampire test tube, and this vampire was basically in place for them to test, and it was like a baby vampire. So you can understand why it was removed, because it's like, why are you testing on a child? But at the same time, this is a character who is there to illustrate the threat, why you need to test these things. But I get it. You can't show that type of stuff on screen. However, it also did maybe then think, well, if you go back to something like Total Recall, you have Quato, who was a mutant. Yes, I know it seemed like just something living inside another man's stomach, but hey, it was what was happening, Can't deny it. I might try sitting in a different position just to see if this helps with the lighting, because it's not very good, and I don't think that's acceptable. So this is a proper actually moving around my living room at the moment. Oh, right. So this might work a bit better. Oh, that's better. I did originally plan to sit in this position, and I changed my mind, but I think that's much better. So yeah, getting the introduction now to Deacon. Again, proper formal introduction of Deacon Frost. And Stephen Dorff, who did a lot of really cool films in the mid to early 1990s. He's really great in this film. He's obviously a smaller physical build to Wesley Snipes. That doesn't mean that he's any less effective or any more threatening. In fact, he's probably in some cases more intimidating than Blade because of his size. Because he's smaller, he seems more aggressive. What I find is also interesting is you have these living vampires, so people who are born vampires. And if you go and look at a lot of vampire lore, what you tend to find is that these type of vampires will be considerably more powerful than a vampire who is turned. And yet in the film, they're no more powerful than a turned vampire. So I thought that was quite an interesting choice to make. There's mention of pure blood. Maybe that again had a influence on Harry Potter, Mudbloods. It's obviously some form of racist analogy when you look at things like that. But I also think that it's quite compelling to show that you've got the way that this pure blood reign of vampires have the born vampires who run the systems are just content with, we're just going to keep our heads down, stay out of the way, not getting any bother. Yeah, we don't want any trouble. Because of that, we're going to just keep everything on the down low. Which is also kind of weird, isn't it? You just think you're an alpha species, you are top of the food chain. Do you need to be hidden in the same way? Don't know, just a thought. It's good to see as well that Blade has a small number of friends outside of his inner circle of Whistler, and as the film develops, Karen. He has his friend who makes or helps him with the ingredients he needs for his serum, which represses his one vampire weakness, I suppose, that he's sort of taken over by removing the need to or the desire to drink blood. But it's always funny because whenever Blade's in trouble, he always seems to drink blood, and it kind of gives him like a power up. So it's almost like a very strange thing not to do, because maybe he could drink the blood of other animals, maybe not humans. Don't know, just a thought. I think as well what it shows is the transient life that this type of character would lead. So you have minimal furnishings. There isn't really much around. Blade is somebody who, so they keep things down to very low level in terms of the things that they have. And then what they try and do is move around and move on. That's the thing that matters is, they've got rid of one nest of vampires, if you like, and they're moving on to the next one. it's also quite interesting that Karen's now is a good conduit for us as the audience. She's moving through where Blade lives. She's seeing some of the things he has, including his sword. And this is quite a good scene with all the weapons displayed. She picks up the sword, activates its defensive mechanism of the handle, which exposes 3 additional blades, which, as we learn later on, will cause damage to anybody who's holding it and is not aware of how to prevent that mechanism from kicking into action. So this is the first time we get to see Blade as well take the serum to try and help him. Chris Christopherson, like the character in the cartoons, has his leg brace on from the injury caused by a vampire who murdered his family when they broke his leg. Oh, better bite down. It's going to hurt a bit. The serum obviously has quite an interesting effect on Blade. I would say Wesley Snipes looks like he's cut from Grey in this film. Just to be fair, so does Chris Christopherson. He's still got some serious definition going on. So they do a nice introduction there with Whistler himself, but also the way that Blade can move so quietly and so easily around. Apparently, when they're doing the refueling of the car, it's actually water. That's what gets splashed all over the place. There's a sheer casual nature which is doing it. All right, I'll just have a cigarette. Yeah, and boom, boom, there goes Blade's car, there goes Whistler, there's Goose, and no, they can't do that. So it's water that they're putting in the fuel tank. Regenerating vampires, good.
So what do you use? Steak, caustic? Vampires are fairly allergic to silk. These viruses are going anaphylactic shock. Of course, there's only sunlight, ultraviolet rays. I got this sucker running. Want to give it a try tonight?
I love that. Gives them the ultraviolet torch. Blade picks it up. Still heavy. You're so big. I like as well the way that there's a hierarchy. So vampires have humans working for them who want to become vampires.
Blade, myself, a few others. Try to keep it from spilling over on the streets. Sometimes people like yourself get caught in the crossfire. I can go to the police. They all the police. You have to understand that chances are you see yourself.
Very interesting take in terms of thinking, actually, we could have vampires. We have got vampires everywhere. They're everywhere. They're into everything. So they're a conspiracy theorist stream. So it's not lizards. It's not lizard people at all. It is vampires. That's what we need to bear in mind. vampires that are in control of everything.
By yourself. Start getting sensitive to daylight. Find you're thirsty.
No sugarcoating with Whistler. If you're going to die, if you've been bitten by a vampire and you're going to die, you think you're going to turn, time to say goodbye. I think as well, what's really interesting is that the director, Stephen Dorrington, was a bit bonkers, and he upset as many people as he did keep happy. But I think the aesthetic works really well. It's definitely had a big influence on films that's come forward. There's as I said before, I think The Matrix is a big example of that. But I also feel that if you look at the Raid 2, there's the fight sequence in the corridor between the baseball guy and the hammer girl, and Blade takes on a male and female vampire later on, and it's obviously it must have influenced that in some way. It's just one of these things where you just go, oh, yeah, you can see as time's progressed the influence that it's had. Very angry vampire on screen. So this is really important seen in terms of learning about the blood god La Magra and seeing that there is an opportunity for something. The only question I've got about this vampire god and the fact that he can turn anybody who gets in his way is for all vampires, what the vampires feed on? Just a question, and it's possibly something that we don't need to really worry about doing. We don't have to overthink these things, but it is an interesting dichotomy that's raised there. Yep, Blade just literally driving at pedestrians, not caring. It's quite interesting as well, the look. So the city looks a little bit downtrodden, a little bit rough and ready. Like things are okay, but they're not great. But because you've been exposed and you know that vampires exist, now there's more threats out there. You first get a glimpse of the vampire glitter on people's necks to let you know that people are in bother, they're in a bit of trouble. Interesting though, not quite sure why Karen has the two plasters really visible on her neck. Surely one big covering would have been better, but more discreet. I don't know. Nice bit of tension. It's got a vampire mace of garlic to try and deter what you think is a vampiric threat. It's actually quite a humble looking place. Most of the time you see these unrealistic places where people live. But at the same time, it's interesting because she's a doctor, so she would be reasonably well compensated for what she does, you'd have thought. Packing to leave town, no doubt. Dodgy cop. Is he a genuine officer or is he something else? I'm not entirely convinced. How would he know her name? Karen Jensen. I love the way the cop's just that. Yeah, don't worry. And now he tried to kill her. Like to save the day. It's a crap out of this cop. This is a serious beatdown. And then through the table. Going a bit WWE or AEW, whichever you prefer these days. Center City Police. It doesn't look very good, does it? This cop, it looks like he's taking a little bit of a beating. What's interesting is interrogating the police officer in daylight. There's people wandering around on the streets. No one's asking any questions. They're just about to shoot him. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it. I'm just saying it's unusual. There's just some screaming and it just stops. It's the world you live in is just beautiful. There is another world. And if you want to survive, you better learn to pull the trigger. Better pull the trigger. Wait a minute. I'm coming with you. I'm coming with you. You useless. Still gets in the car. I like it. Could use a time-lapse camera as well to bring in the night time. And he's back for his car after running away. Going for a fast drive around town now. Again, good use of time lapse to make things appear to be quicker, whilst keeping the speech and everything else at normal pace. Showing vampires, they're everywhere. You wouldn't even notice normally. I'm just going to get my drink. Oh, that's why I'm on the move. My drink's in the wrong place. Oh. So, hang on a second. Get my drinks right. Okay. Apparently vampires have a scent. I don't know what it's supposed to be. Probably monkey death. I don't know. Ever fails to get his sword in his back, which is interesting. Never misses that opportunity. Need an invitation. Blade's invitation is throwing him through a door. If it works. So we find out this club is also a place for Japanese businessmen to watch women, and I hope they're women, dancing, singing, dancing, schoolgirl uniforms. We all have our life choices. So the cop knows that Blade's found him. Again, I think it works. Wesley Snipes' martial arts style really helps here because it's nicely structured. It makes simple executions, simple maneuvers look really powerful. His front kick always looks really good. Trying to convince him that stuff's in the freezer. I don't believe you. This turns out to be Vampire Archive territory, where we meet Pearl. Open season. Yeah, I'm never quite sure how easy it would be to get a sword out like that. I mean, as a kid, I always thought it'd be cool because it's like He-Man, but yeah. It's a long sword that Blade's carrying. So these archives just like a giant server room, but I don't think they're computers. Unless I'm very much mistaken, but I swear that Karen just pulls it open. It just seems like a bit of probably just an aesthetic design thing. Now in Decomfrost, see, it just paid to be a vampire. It looks like it anyway. You must have your money. Decomfrost, living it large though. Vampires and yellow rubber ducks, not something I really expect to see in your water feature. This is quite interesting. I would learn that Frost has sort of like a metal coffin bed of sorts. Now, I'm pretty certain that even in 1998, Max couldn't create a translation program and do the graphics that's being suggested. Does that mean? So it's interesting now because in films, Apple very, very insistent that you can't use, bad guys can't be seen using their phones. Yeah, this is obviously a pre-roll. They're quite happy to see their computers be used by bad guys.
It's about late. Late is waiting for me. Look, you're gonna go and think. She's gonna. I know. Yeah. Don't worry about it. No problem. Still get the girl.
Oh, and it looks like Deacon's had enough of his familiar cop. He's just took a huge chunk out of his neck. Got himself. Just had enough.
You me, Quinn?
Quinn's not sure why. Deacon Frost wants Blade alive. Not quite Gordon's alive, but very similar. Oh, not quite sure why Pearl farts all the time.
Charles, the history. Have a good grace to die with some fucking dignity.
Also, again, sorry for the extreme close up there. How were they able to do video calls in 1998? Being the best one in the world, dialed up the band. I don't think that would have been possible. But hey, doesn't matter. Pearl's getting a bit of a roasting right now. Not necessarily a bad thing. Pearl apparently is a vampire in the larger script who used to feed on specifically on children, so no real sympathy. It's where you really find out about Lamagra, the blood god, and how you need 12 pure blood vampires plus the Day Walker to bring the blood god into existence. Oh, some kind of interesting explosive. Karen proving to be a little bit more destructive and aggressive than you thought she might be with her. Pearl's cries. They should pity it. Blade's obviously forgot his key card. So it's some form of shaving foam. No, that can't be right, can it? How would they create that effect? So we're here in what appears to be the place where they keep the vampire Bible, the Book of Erebus. So there's something in here. I'm not sure what. Blade's on the lookout. Good use of the way the film sets up the sheets from the Magra. There's all these different pages, all in the individual glass cases. They're all hung in different directions. So it makes finding this child, who's not really a child, running around, who's now having a good go at Blade, showing some nice taekwondo techniques, giving Blade the opportunity to show off some more of his karate. Also, again, it's showing that Blade is not indestructible. He's not unbeatable. Quinn's grown his arm back now, although it still looks a bit weird, a bit more vampiric than human at the moment. Desperate for Quinn's getting his revenge on from Blade, setting him on fire, I think.
Now this here is a man who takes his job.
And 3, 2, 1. Ooh. Whistler's making his big save entrance. Blown a huge wall down with some explosive. I think he's got an assault rifle that has a backpack full of ammunition. I'm pretty certain of that, because he would have run out of bullets by now, surely. And there's a nice explosive. Train sequence is really good. Gives you the idea of actually how dangerous it is to be off a surface. There's plenty of room on an underground. Explosives have gone off and obviously taken out quite a few of the vampires. Karen's just missed the third rail, looking for her. Otherwise, she'd be gone. And Quinn is going off the Blade, and he's just made it. Karen's just fallen off the platform. Blade's trying to help her up. But Quinn seems more interested in see Whistler get to safety. Oh, and Quinn's having his face rubbed against the side of an underground train. He's had his other arm cut off this time. His right arm's been cut off. He had his left arm cut off before. No, he's had his right arm cut off before. Cut off before, cut off now. I feel sorry for him to some extent. Here we go. Ooh. I like this as well because even though they can move at high speed, even there's a group of vampires chasing Blade and Karen now, they couldn't catch the train. So that's quite good to show there's a limit to what they're capable of. And Blade's shoulder's dislocated, mirroring Karen's dislocated shoulder from much earlier in the film, when he threw her from the hospital roof, or hospital window, sorry, onto an opposing roof. Who is just about to inject himself with his serum. Can we, other than killing the thirst, is still not 100% certain what the serum does. So it goes into, takes back, and now you get more backstory from Whistler, talking about how Blade was found Blade on the street.
Blade's mother was attacked by a vampire. She died, but he lived. Unfortunately, he's undergone certain genetic changes.
So it's a good way to bring in. We're not getting too much exposition, but we're just getting enough to help fill in the background of Blade from what's been happening so far, why he's the way he is, Whistler's story.
Unfortunately, he also inherited that thirst.
Again, reference to the thirst, the thing that is really the only weakness Blade has from his vampire bite.
So far, all my efforts to find a cure have failed.
Whiskey and cigarettes.
My family once, wife, 2 daughters. Drifter came calling one evening. Vampire.
It's where you get Whistler's story about his family being killed by a drifter.
Before they died. Killed as many of them as we can find.
You understand why he's motivated.
Something happened to the vampire land. Something big. Stigma like that. Something big at the sound.
Blade is mournfully at a chair, staring at a wall. I think this is, well, part of the vulnerability for Blade, because he's also going, you know, I'm not just a vampire. I'm not a human. Because of this, I'm kind of a bit. and his motivation for doing it is because his life was changed because of what a vampire did, and that's why he wants to kill people.
Let me take this guy out, man. Look what he's fucking doing to my hand there. We've been trying to kill this motherfucker for years. Are you out of your fucking mind? What?
Be relaxed, be patient. Shit. So this is where we see the end of the leader of the Vampire Council, Nagano, which is quite a good, interesting way to do it. So Frosty's been caked in what appears to be sunblock, sunscreen, and it's early morning. And of course, a born vampire will have never seen sunrise before. Again, good use of dry ice to show how uncomfortable Nagano is in sunlight.
Oh, that's right. You were born. You never had pleasure.
Born a vampire, yes.
At least we're here together. Share the moment. Which means a lot to me, by the way. Actually, when you get to know me, look, I don't know. Get him in it. You just don't fucking get. Hold it. You will never.
Pretty brutal having his canines removed.
Have a nice day.
Quinn there with another one of his interesting gags, too long in the tooth. And it's quite a brutal death for Nagano. His flesh seems to literally pull itself off. And then he sets himself on fire, and then he explodes.
What have you done with Dragon? Down to business, Joe. I need 12 volunteers.
I think that the money guy from Blade is also Khan Union Singh, right-hand man from Star Trek 2. The Blade is still not convinced about the ability to find a cure. But this is also where we get to find about the vampire explosion fueled EDTA. This is also where we learn that Whistler's not in the best of health anymore. My deal with cigarettes he's probably been smoking over time has not done her any favours, I'm sure. The big C, not a good way to go. Cold heart is a dead heart. It's like they didn't catch Karen's vampire bites in time. Blade's gone to go get some more serum. And this is another opportunity. This is a chance for Blade to go finally go face to face, meet face to face with Frost. The only thing I don't quite get with the sunblock thing is, does he put it on his hair as well? Interesting thing to bear in mind. Cattle. Again, think about the speech that Deacon Frost gives here, talking about humans as cattle. 12 months later, The Matrix, human beings are a virus. Agent Smith. Definite parallels between the two. I'm offering you the truth. I want you to look I came down here offering you an easy way out. Spit right back in my pocket. Here. What do I hear? Nothing but cow. Just like you said. You want to take the hard road. But I promise you by the time it's over, you're going to wish they never cut you from your mother's womb. Proto bullet time dodge there from Deacon. He throws the child. I mean, she He must be seriously hurt. Just went straight to the back of some kind of food truck. Blade to the rescue. Boom, boom. Doctor experimenting on himself. Don't blame her. If you don't want to be a vampire.
We're out of time. Saw what was on that disc.
So the raid of Whistlers and Blade's hideout.
Get out of here.
So this definitely appears to be more familiars being used. Oh, Whistler shot through his bad leg.
Nice play.
This is the only bit I don't quite understand is when it Deacon Frost is with Blade. And then he's able to go to Blade to get back before Blade can. Quite a brutal beatdown as well. The kicks, the stomps. Really unpleasant, quite extra vicious. So we also know at this point that Frost has kidnapped Karen. And we also get to see what unfortunately has happened to Whistler, which isn't pleasant. Telex 90s, video cassette, no DVDs, no USB stick, no memory card. Kind of nice touch. Looking a little bit the worse for wear as Whistler. I like that. Blade is trying to treat his wounds. Again, that's a critical point. The blood of the Daywalker is needed in order to awaken the Magra. Blades gun. It's like a modified Mac 10 with a little bit of extras added on to make it look like something completely different. Yeah, appears to be dead. Now we're getting a bit of a montage of how to make silver bullets. Blade removing his roots because he's obviously settled down from being in the same place too long by ceremonially removing them from a plant that he was tending to. Ooh, ditching the muscle car in favour of a much more handy little motorbike. Again, big link into the Matrix I feel with the assault making his way up through the property where Deacon Foster is to try and rescue Karen and Deacon. I wonder what happened. Where is Stephen? What's Stephen Dorff? What did he make of this? Let's have a quick look. Blade. So there's some kind of TV show Deputy, which is that's on Fox, so it's only in America. He was in True Detective. I mean, what did he? Didn't quite get the lift that he probably should have done. The voice of Jack Carver in Far Cry. And credited in Zoolander. In SFW is where I first really remember seeing him. And I knew he was in Backbeat, where he played Stuart, sucked off the fifth beat on. That's in Roseanne for 3 episodes. Still the be then different strokes in the 80s. And 5'8". Oh, it's a shame his mother died of brain cancer in February 2008. That's really sad. Apparently, he was in consideration to play Jack in Titanic. They're all a bit on edge because Blade's about to come after them. Definitely, here we are, we're having a raid and he goes into the basement area, into the lobby area, sorry, as I should say, of the Beacon Cross building. Obvious connections with the lobby entrance with the Matrix. Let's have a look at some. Nice little nod there as well with one of the henchmen being killed. I just worked for them. So this is a bit where they've got these sort of cattle prods. Blade taken on two martial arts vampires. Definitely must have been an influence on the road too. Apparently Jet Li was offered the part of the Hospitality Lethal Weapon 4 instead. Stan Lee was going to have a cameo at the start of the film. Probably best that he didn't. Wesley Snipes was going to be the original Black Panther. That's quite a nice little factoid. Well, that's quite interesting. The sound effect of the coffin bed is the same as what would happen when the Space Marines were freed from hypersleep. Nice little factoid there. So now Blade has realised that his mother is not dead. And this is obviously the perfect distraction required. I'm using a lot of tasers on Blade at the moment.
Blake, give it up. It's over. It belongs to me, buddy. Almost a surprise. Spent your whole life looking for vampire position, huh? Here I am. Who would ever guess you survived your mother's death? But you did. Here we are. One big happy fucking thing.
Looking good. So, transport to the La Magra site taking place at the moment. So, just driving through the streets. So, I'm getting the impression that this facility has been constructed for centuries beforehand. And maybe have been attempted before. I just wonder if there's more than one Temple of Eternal Night, doesn't it? Student of history.
This temple was built for one glorious moment. This night, for the blood god. Let's see. Okay.
Deacon Frost was not going to fall for the old trap.
Hold out your arm.
Blade sword. Blade is totally lost in the thirst at the moment. He's totally useless.
Here. How long since this shot? Well,
Lord Deacon Frost tried Blade Serum. Of course, there will be. No. Oh.
Shame, you know. I think it was. I mean, whatever happened.
Human side Mage Blade Week, apparently.
Fuck downstairs now.
So looks like we're now setting up for this
Don't worry, sweetheart. We haven't forgotten that.
great big ceremony to bring out the blood god. Ooh. So Karen's going to go meet her doctor friend, who's been my queen at the start, whose vampirism didn't take properly, so he's some kind of abomination vampire, you know, something that's not quite right. He's kind of stuck. Question of validity. Facility. What does that even mean? Oh. So it refers to the natural colouring of the skin. Usually happens in the first 2 hours after death. So it basically refers to his zombification, if you like. But it looks like Karen's got out there okay. My blade is going to be entombed in some kind of torture facility. Obviously, Blade, again, massive influence for Raven in Tekken. In Tekken 4 onwards, I think. But Raven is definitely Blade. So, we finally find out that Eric, aka Blade, his mother is definitely 100% into being a vampire, and that's it. She's not really worried about her son in any way, shape, or form. Which makes sense. You know, she wasn't human anymore. Vampire first always wins, apparently. And now we know with Blade being entombed, it's about to go off. So he's thinking and sort of cuts into his wrists. Interesting as well, because it does look like as his mother's watching, she's having second thoughts. So she's looking at it as if to say, is this really right? Should I be doing this? She's getting out just in time to help save Blade. It's gone very, very dark.
Blood card? That's nothing more than a fairy tale. Pretty little vampire Good bark this right.
Karen is now looking for free blade. Oh, there's that nasty cuts on his wrist. He's bled a lot. And yeah,
We're compromised. We're gonna be God. Yeah. I'm gonna be naughty. The naughty vampire God.
so I definitely think the drinking blood to save blade is substitute vaccine. Now we're finding out that the vampires are being purebloods are now being held in position. Have to stop soon, Blade. Karen's not going to be alive much longer. Stop, Blade, stop, 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 stop. And Deacon Frost is going to get a hit now with a big load of Blade blood. It's one big drop. Still tell it's early days of CG. Coming down, coming down, coming down, coming down. Blade looks seriously powered up, seriously angry. There's always his mother coming to check on him. Surprised that he's alive. Oh! Deacon's been touched by the blood. A lot of lightning. That Karen's still walking after she's lost all that blood. It's crazy. think Blade is going to stinker. It was just Snipes' mother. And the two other vampires have changed into some kind of boned, winged creature things. And they're going to possess Deacon. That's having an effect because Deacon's eyes are going from blue and white to all red. Deacon, not anymore. Yeah, so Quinn just got killed in like 2 seconds. And he got sunglasses back. Of course he did. Blade is not in the mood to be messing around. He is literally beating the hell out of these minion vampires. Oh, maybe not all of them minion vampires. He's just done a quick tribute by roadhousing the hell out of somebody. Oh, kick straight in the Swede. Oh. No, now vampire mace works. Ugh. Exploding head. Oh, broken leg. Blade's in his sword. lightning fast sword fight. Deacon's lost an arm. Oh, and he's been cut in. No, he hasn't. Again, shame about the early CG. Great blade. Doing his best to end Deacon, but I don't think it's going to work that way anymore. This is definitely a much better way of doing it than having this huge, great big CG blood thing up here. Much better. I mean, there's nothing worse is that you watch these, sometimes the big films, you look at Rise of the Silver Surfer, wouldn't show Galactus on screen, just shows giant cloud, just looked rubbish. You saw Green Lantern, Parallax, just bad. It's not acceptable. Don't worry about spectacle, let the actors do their job. And here we go. The blood god has been hit with the explosive blood serum quite a few times. Deacon Frost wearing Converse with a suit. A suit with his Converse, his suit. So obviously influencing David Tennant's Doctor Who. Blade, some mother flippers. The line is something that apparently Wesley Snipes used to say in production meetings. That's where that came from. So they put it in the script because they thought it sounded good, which I like. And yeah, the blue stuff worked. Bit of a delayed reaction there from Wesley. So what's interesting here is if you see, I don't know if it's on the Blu-ray because I've only got it on DVD, but if you see in the DVD extras, you can probably find this on YouTube. I've seen it myself. It shows them, Karen and Blade, climbing out of the temple, and it's a different ending where you see a character stood on a rooftop, and on that rooftop is supposed to be Michael Morbius, or Mobius the living vampire. And that was the original plan. They wanted the sequel to be about Blade versus Mobius. However, what New Line didn't realize is that they didn't have the rights to that character because it belongs to the Spider-Man universe, which Sony owned the rights to. So, never going to see it. So instead, we get this slightly different version, which at the time I think really works very well. Just proves Blade moving around from place to place, country to country, finding the vampire nests and putting a stop to them. In this case, we go to Moscow. He finds a vampire club and is prepared to clean them out. Catch it about time. Comrade. That's it. That is Blade. Thank you for talking about it. can't believe it's been nearly 2 hours. Thank you for watching. I think what I'm going to try and do with these is I'm going to go through superhero comic book films from Blade onwards. And just doing by release. So by my calculations, that would mean that the X-Men from 2000 is next. I can't believe that's 20 years ago. Crazy. Oh, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you sometime next week. Bye-bye.